Hi, and welcome everybody. Welcome to the end of the year list, the best records of 2024. We have almost reached the end of the year, and every year you think, I don't know if I found that many good records, but when you put them all together and you make your selection, it's amazing. Again, this year, some really beautiful albums has been added to the collection. And like every year, if you don't know my best of videos, order of the records that I'm showing is selected by you. It is the amount of likes a record got on Instagram that determines the order. So let's start with number 9. And we start off with this monster of an album from 1971, released in Germany. People who know this album will recognize it immediately by the cover. It's The Call by Mal Waldron. It got 120 likes. It is a jazz album because it's recorded in Germany. Mal Waldron, he moved I think late 60s to Europe, stayed here for a couple of years, and he really interacted with the musicians when he moved around. He did it in France. This one is in Germany, and the music, he plays of course the Fender Rhodes. It's early 70s. You get loads of Fender Rhodes on this album, but the groove on this album is really funky. It's a kind of a funky psychedelic groove that is really, together with the bass and the drums, they put something down that is very accessible. I mean, if you're not into jazz, I'm sure you're gonna like it just by the groove of the music. It's really special, and it is two sides, or of course it's two sides as an album, but there's one side on every side has one song. Sorry for that. So there's a lot of improvisation. Every artist has the freedom to do some soloing. And the next I want to sample is when it is Eberhard Weber on the electric bass, which really, he takes it away. The other players are Jimmy Jackson on organ and Fred Bracewell on drums. The next album is from the golden years of jazz funk. We're talking 1976, an album by Lonnie Liston Smith. He's maybe the inventor of jazz funk with his album Expansions. That's really the start, when there is that beautiful mix between jazz, commercial jazz, a little bit of smoothness, funkiness and soulfulness. It's all in this album also. It is released on Flying Dutchman. It's the last album Lonnie Liston Smith did for Flying Dutchman. Maybe for that reason I almost would say it is the pinnacle of his collection, because afterwards he moves a little bit, of course, with the times. Beforehand he was a little bit more on the jazzy side. Here he finds some kind of balance that is really beautiful. It's almost you can mediate on it, you can listen to it, you can do something else with it. It sounds beautiful. It got 121 votes. I think a lot of people know this album and also like it. In 2024 I was clearly on a Fender Rhodes trip. So many albums have the Fender Rhodes as the main instrument. I just love the sound of that instrument. This time we have Mike Longo on the album called Awakening. It's from 1972. It's released on Mainstream Records and Mainstream Records. Early 70s. They did some amazing albums. They are a little bit, can you say, undiscovered? This album got 131 likes, so a lot of people know about it, but still the prices of these albums, they're still reasonable. I'm surprised by that because the musicianship, it is really high standards. Mike Longo, like many, is a jazz pianist, or like many, he moved or embraced the soul and funk of the early 70s. Still on this album, there's quite a lot of jazz influences, which really gives the album a different vibe, different to the previous one. An album that's really, really beautiful. And the next album got 10 more likes and finished on position number 6 with 141 likes. I think you immediately recognize the irresistible groove from the vibraphone from Roy Ayers. This album, released in 1973 on Polydor, it's magical. It's called Virgo Red, it's Roy Ayers on vibraphone. We still get a lot of Fender Rhodes. Harry Whittaker is playing the Fender Rhodes, and together they created, especially on the first few albums, and I don't know when the combo stopped that Harry Whittaker did no longer play on the albums. I think also on the one after this one, but especially on the first few ones. The combination, they really created their own soundscape, and the vibraphone and the Rhodes together, it's magic. And I want to sample next Love from the Sun, as it is winter time, and it also gives a peek in the direction that Roy Ayers will be going next. And we move from one superstar to the next superstar. We're talking about Tim Maia, the godfather of Brazilian soul and funk. He released in 1973 the album Tim Maia. I believe these first 3 albums are called Tim Maia. Later on he released some albums with the name Tim Maia. Doesn't get it any easier, but when you see a cover, well, anyway, if you see Tim Maia on the cover, you pick it up. This album, released on Polydor, it got 162 likes, so a lot of people really like the music, and Tim Maia is special. With his baritone voice, he even on the slow songs, he really puts you in a good mood, and the faster songs, of course, you want to dance to it. But on this album, all the songs are so good. It is a fantastic album that just gives and gives and gives, and it is really there to enjoy. And on number 4 we have a bit of a strange album, William S. Fischer with Circles. It's released in 1970 on the Embryo label, which was the label of Herbie Mann. It is in basic, it is a jazz rock album. It's mixing jazz with rock, but that's too simple. It's experimental, it's avant-garde, because there is logic to the music, and on the other hand there's no logic. It moves in directions you don't expect, and on the other hand there is this groove, there's this attractiveness to the music which really grabs you and gets your attention. You get if I need to describe it a little bit more, it's like Sly and the Stone funk with some Jimi Hendrix guitars, and then put in 5 cellos in the mix. Something really you don't expect. I don't know if he did many albums, but this one is unique. You need to hear it. Some points it takes a left where there is introduced some electronics with the Moog. I skipped that part, that's a little bit too much for me, but the other songs are really, really interesting and really fun to listen to. And we're entering the top 3 of the best finds of 2024. And we're back to the Fender Rhodes. This time played by Walter Bishop Jr. with Soul Village. An album released in 1977, so we're back into the jazz funk era. Walter Bishop Jr. is of course famous for the albums he did on black jazz. And that was when he was living on the West Coast. When he moved to the East Coast, he also moved label and he recorded for Muse. This was his first album for that label, and the music is typical. Well, the best way to describe it is just look at the cover, the scene on it, that's the music you're getting. It has that streetwise, it's a little bit slick, people are wearing bell bottoms, something fishy is maybe going on, maybe there's even a car chase in the background, I don't know, but that's the music you get. It is really fitting and cinematic to the scene you see on the cover. And a big surprise on number 2, we have an album from France. It is an album released in 1977 on Eurodisc, and it is of course by the wonderful, amazing Harry Texier. He is a musician. He is really, there's no other word. The way he plays the bass, how he incorporates it with the music, because if you have to describe the music, what are you hearing? It is a kind of avant-garde music, in the sense experimental. There are influences of African music with the percussion, the Celtic, folk, Indian, Middle East. You can combine it all together, and he does that, but he does it in a way. And that's of course what attracts me. There's a funky groove. The groove, there is some funkiness in that bass, the way that he plays it, and that melts all these genres together, and you get something that is amazing, wonderful. And of course you also have his other album. This is his second album that he released. It is my personal favorite. I'm curious which is your favorite. Is it this one or the album he released first? But the music, you can keep listening to it. You can play it again and again, and you will discover every time something new. And now, the number 1 album from 2024, my best find in this year. And I must say, I agree, the album got 173 likes, and it was also my personal favorite find of the year. It is an album that is unique. I discovered it maybe 10-20 years ago, long time after it was released. I think the official release date is 1973. It's released on Mo West. I don't think it sold very well at that time. The music is familiar, but on the other hand it is unique. The familiarness is the soul, the funk vibe, but there's also the folk side on it, and really it's typical of the early 70s. There were a few albums that have this mix, and And it is that uniqueness, the way that it is different, that has the big attraction. Also, the songs are filled with hope and joy. And if you're in Europe, for some reason they really did not sell this album, because all of them will have these cutouts. And it is because it seems that they all ended up in the dollar bins in Scandinavia. I got my album from Sweden. It is amazing how many of these albums come from that area. That must have, somehow they must have dumped the albums there, because it is no coincidence. When I see a picture of it, it has a cutout, you know it is a Scandinavian album from Europe. Now let's sample the next song and enjoy it.